I'm Mike Dukart, creator of Illusion Game Call Systems. And as a former outfitter, it was hard for me to go to the store and buy a call that would work as effective in the field as I needed it to. So for the past 12 years, I've been designing and engineering products that would work with a much wider range of tone and volume. Now, each one of these systems is packaged with a CD-ROM that plays video on your computer, and it has an audio track for a CD player. And these CDs teach you what the language of the animal is so that you can be more effective in the field. Our new Canada Goose Flute is designed unlike anything else out on the market today. The revolutionary flute hole allows you to break back and forth on your notes by simply placing your finger over the hole and lifting it off. So let's get right into teaching you how to do that. The first thing you want to do is hold the call between your thumb and your index finger, wrap your fingers around the call, and use your pinky finger as back pressure, and we'll go over that as we go through the different call sounds. Now, I like to put the flute hole on the side so that I can easily put my finger over, place it over, seal it, and lift it off. Now, once that's in your hand, you'll have an offhand, which is what we call your baffle hand. Now, it's very important that you don't cover the end of the call. You want to have a deep chamber and just deflect the notes back and forth. I like to remember to use my fingertips only on the edge, and then you don't have to worry about covering the end too much, because that will have a bad effect on how the call is controlled for you. So once your baffle hand is there and you're ready to deflect your notes and change your tone slightly, you can simply blow through the call. Now, to do that, just place it on your bottom lip and have your top lip come down about halfway on the end of the call. It's just like you're sipping on a bottle of pop, and it's just like this. So now we're ready to blow into the call. And just imagine you're blowing out the birthday candles on your cake. So you just blow into the call, you'll see my cheeks puff up and make a steady sound. Now you notice my finger's off the flute hole. We'll do that again. This is actually note number 1. Steady air pressure. Now when I place my finger over the flute hole and I have steady air pressure, it'll snap it to note number 2. Do it again. It's that simple. So now let's do a couple exercises, practice up a little bit, and find out how the call really is controlled. So what we're going to do is blow steady air pressure into the call, go from note number 1 to note number 2, back and forth by just lifting and dropping your finger. Let's do it. Now you'll notice that the note number 1 snaps to note number 2. Now if you want to make a solid honk type sound, you just stop your airflow when you snap the note over. And it sounds like this. Stop it with your tongue. As soon as I feel the call snap, I just stop the air. And that's how the call is used. It's real simple. Let's start things off with the honk. The honk is simply note number 1 going to note number 2. Now we'll blow into the call, we'll put our finger over the hole, snap it off sharply by stopping our airflow, and I use my tongue to help stop it real sharp too. Let's try it. Now, typically the honk's been used, I would say, a little bit too much. A lot of people just honk when they see geese, and the geese have gotten wise to that as far as calling goes. So I rarely use the honk anymore. If I do use it, it's as a greeting type call, and it's a really short type of a honk, something like this. And that's how I usually do the honk. So now we're going to talk about something new, what I like to call feeder calls or feeder grunts. Now, feeder grunts are nothing more than the note number 1, and then you grunt into the call. So you're not actually snapping the call over, okay? Now, one thing I want to go over is you can do note number 1 with your finger on the hole, and you'll have a slightly different pitch. But note number 2 is actually when you snap the call over into that next level. So let me give you an idea of what the note number 1 is, all feeder grunts are. So I'll give you an idea of what that sounds like with our finger over the hole and grunting into the call. It sounds like this. Okay, so all I'm doing is going do 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 I'm saying do, 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 but I'm grunting with my throat and my chest. Ooh, 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 do, 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 do. And the reason that I say the do, do is because that's the puffs of air through my mouth. But you actually have to grunt with your chest and your throat. Like you're clearing your throat. So let's do that again. And once again, you don't snap into note number 2. You stay into note number 1, but let's cover this hole and get a little deeper pitch. Now we really want to choke off the end of the call when we're doing our feeder grunts and seal off a little bit more with our baffle hand instead of keeping it out away. We'll actually seal off everything but a little hole right here. Let's do it again. And there's nothing wrong if you hit that a little bit hard. You'll snap into a cluck note or into note number 2, and that's fine. So you can do that. If it breaks over, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a pretty good thing. Do it again. Now you see what happens when I take my finger off of that hole? You just get a different pitch, but you're doing the same thing. And if you want to lift that finger off a little bit on occasion, that's fine to get some different variations of pitch. But that's the feeder grunt, and you would use that typically for finishing birds and just kind of some subtle talk. Once you start doing feeder grunts and the birds are close and they're responding real well, that's probably the last thing you're going to do. You'll be setting your call down and it's time to get up and take care of business. Let's get into what I would call probably the most important thing of the Canada Goose language, and that's the cluck. Now the cluck is nothing more than a shortened up version of the honk. And what we're going to do is, rather than focus on that beginning note to build up the pressure on note number 1, is we're just going to automatically try and snap that note over immediately. And the best way to do that is to roll your pinky over the edge, get that good back pressure, seal over the hole because we want to snap it over into that second note immediately. Put your baffle hand in front and just puff quick, sharp air into the call saying toot, toot, toot. And watch my cheeks will puff. It'll be a quick air pressure with my mouth. Now, if I don't put enough air pressure on, it won't snap over and you'll get a sound like this. Okay, if you don't put enough air in, it'll just stay on that low first note, but if you put enough air into it, it'll snap. You'll hear the click. That's a cluck. You want to snap that note over right away. Now, what you need to do with a cluck is you need to have a variation of pitches with your clucks. So what we're going to do now is use that baffle hand we've been talking about to change the different variations of the pitch. Now, there's 2 things that go into this. One is back pressure, the other is the hand moving off, and then the third thing is to add a little extra air pressure for a higher pitch. So we choke it off good with the pinky, have a good sealing baffle hand without covering, and then we're going to do a light rollover note. Now we're going to change to the next pitch. We'll give it a little sharper air and we'll open up that baffle hand a little bit and you'll hear a different pitch. Okay, now we're going to go even a little bit higher yet and put even more air pressure in and open up a little bit more. So now there was a different variation of the same note, or of the same cluck. So now what we're going to do is do them in succession and practice. So I'm just kind of going tu-ta-ti, tu-ta-ti. So it's just an extension of my voice. Try and get the 3 variations. That'll make you more effective. If you can just do 2, that's fine as well. And just those 2 variations alone now take you into another piece of the language. Now things start to get really exciting. Once you've learned the difference between the note number 1 and note number 2 like a honk, and you've learned how to cluck, We can get into the different variations of language that cover a lot of ground and will help you be a lot more successful in the field. So we'll start things off with what I like to call a double cluck, which is 2 clucks, and it's the lowest cluck you can do along with one of the higher pitched clucks. Now it's more rhythm than anything. You've already learned how to cluck different pitches. Now let's learn how to put it together and say something. Here we go. Low cluck to high cluck. Okay, that's one variation of a double cluck. Listen to the geese. You'll start to hear this when you're out in the field or when you're around a lake, and try and mimic that. Okay, now volume has a lot to do with it. If you're in close quarters, it's quiet, and you're trying to double cluck too loud, you're going to spook your geese or alarm them. But if it's real windy and stuff, and you're out in a hunting situation, an open field, let her rip. Let's do a little bit more variation of the double cluck. Once again, 2 clucks. So that's just some variations. You just get a little bit of feel, a little bit of rhythm, and just bloop, 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 bloop. Throw a little bit of emotion into it, and that's your double clucking. Now we're going to get into a variation of what I call a grunt cluck and a clean cluck. Now the grunt cluck is a real natural sound that the goose makes, and a clean cluck is just not grunting into your clucks, but it's more of a younger bird, more an emotional type of thing that geese will do. So we'll start out with a grunt cluck. You make it kind of low and lazy, and it almost sounds like a real short honk. I'll do one for you. Okay, that would be grunting through your cluck, a real natural goose sound. Now a clean cluck, we won't grunt at all. It's all done with air pressures through the mouth, and it'll be a cleaner sound, a little sharper. And you wanted to be able to do both of those. Now you can combine them. You can start out grunting with your throat and clearing your throat and kind of a chest grunt, and then finish it off real quick with a clean cluck. So you just barely start it, kind of a boop, boop. You put a little bit of sound into it at the beginning and clean it up at the end. Kind of like that. So you can put a little more grunt, you can add it, but you'll be going back and forth, and those are nice variations you want to put into the mix. Let's talk about the hutta cluck. The hutta cluck is just an exciting thing that you'll hear geese do when they're on the ground, and all you're doing is clucking into the call and adding a little t at the end of it. I'll demonstrate it for you right here. So all I'm doing is clucking out a note and adding a little t at the end of it. So kind of like a hutta, 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 hutta. And you can variate the speed of it. It has different meanings, that kind of thing. It's nice to throw in every now and then. I'll do it one more time. Hutta, 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 hutta. And there you go. That's your hutta cluck. A nice variation to put in with the mix. Now let's talk about groans or bawls. And it's simply grunting or growling into the call, and then you just elongate it out in kind of that roll, roll. And you hear that a lot when there's geese around. We're going to do that. We're going to start out grunting where we choke it down good, seal off the hole and grunt. And you'll notice I drop my jaw, open my throat, lift my finger off the hole to variate the tone of it. So it's a grunt, and I just open up. It's like an extension of my voice. So I'm going, boo, boo, and I'm just groaning in through the call. Now, you can add clucks into that. So if you want to cluck before and after, it sounds a little bit like this, and I use this a lot. And that's your groans. I like to use the fly down call on geese when they're circling around me. A lot of times I'll trick them into thinking there's another bird flying into the set, and it'll turn them and drop them right in. Another good thing is to use it when you have flying decoys out there. So let's do a little demo of how that works. It's a little tricky. You're going to roll over the note twice. So you'll start out with a low note, you'll go re-don. So you're actually starting out low, go into the high and back low again. So it's low, high, low. Re-don, like this. Just listen to it. You see how it's fluttering back and forth? I'm just snapping it into that high note and bringing it back into a long fly down. Now I'll do it like the geese do it. And I really open up my jaw and my throat, and I kind of change the amount of air pressure that's going in to get a real low, deep, hollow sound. Once again. And if a goose is real excited and wants to come into the set real hard, they'll do it a little bit different in speed, a little bit more with emotion. So you can do a slow one, like there's one just turning to come in. He does one or two, or you can do a younger, a younger bird coming in with a lot of emotion. Now, a slow one would be like this. So you could be clucking and throw one of them in there. Cluck, throw a few more in there, and then it could be a young bird coming in hard. Do 2 or 3 real quick. Sounds like an aggressive bird coming in hard. So those are the variations of the fly down, and I do use that mixed in with my flock clucking. Now let's talk about the loner call and the distress call. Now, if you're out hunting as a outfitter, I would be sitting there and I'd hear a loner at a distance, and you hear that roop, roop, and you'd hear that. And back in the day, you could just mimic that sound, and that bird would automatically come right down into the decoys. That's not the case so much anymore. But the sounds of the loner is just like this. It's just kind of a long cluck, kind of a broop, broop, and there's a little bit of gap there. Now there's also the distress call. That's the same basic note, but it's done in a different fashion, and it means something completely different. A loner is looking around, kind of emotional, saying, hey, where is everybody? Where a distress is a single bird going, get out of here. So this is what that sounds like. It's 3 in a row. It's a little bit quicker. And you may hear this when you got a bunch of birds working you, and all of a sudden one of them figures something out, and all of a sudden you hear that broop, 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 and he's just taken off, and it sounds like this. Broop, broop, broop. Typically it's 3 times, and you'll hear it. And if you hear that broop, 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 that's a bird. If it's on the ground and it's taken off, maybe you let him set there, the rest of the birds are coming in. If they're not in all the way and he pops up and does that, you better take the birds, you better take him, because he's just telling everybody to get out of there. So it's not something you want to do, but it's something you definitely want to know about. The comeback call. Now I use a comeback call a lot on early season flocks and along with younger birds. I typically like to use it when the birds are just trying to figure out what they want to do. In fact, many times we've shot into birds, they split up, and just as they're trying to reassemble, I'll hit them with that comeback, and it'll bring them right back in. If you can bring that one goose in, the rest may follow. So the comeback is just like this. Okay, so that's something that you don't do a bunch of times in a row, but you cluck like you're in a frenzy, and then you'll throw that in there, bloop, 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 and just watch the geese. Just watch them. You're pleading at you're trying to get them to come back to you, find the weak one, and lay it on him. So let's do it in an actual hunting scenario where I'm clucking, and then I'll throw the comeback in there. And I'll pick that bird out, I'll focus on him, and I'll blow the note right at him, and then I'll say, come back, come back, and I'm picking out the weak one. If I can get him to turn and come back in right before the group comes together, a lot of times they'll drop right in. You never want to do that when they're coming directly at you and they're looking good. That's a little bit too aggressive. You'll blow them out. But if you've shot into a flock early season, they're reassembling, we bring back in geese all the time. Or if you got birds that are working and they look like they're just trying to make up their mind, give them a little comeback, just one or two, not too aggressively, along with your clucking, and that may be what it takes to turn them and drop them right in. The plea is another type of call that you can use to try and get birds to come into you. It's a really emotional thing, and all you do is just kind of blow into the call and just bleep, bleep. It's kind of a pleading type deal, and I'll demonstrate it for you. And you really blow out that note at the end. It's so you start out. That's kind of a plea. Now, you don't want to use that a lot, but that's something that might work nice if the birds are really screaming and going crazy and you got like big flocks working you that particular day, or if one or two flocks come in and they meet and they mix up and they decide they're trying to come in. There's all kinds of commotion. There's a lot of heavy calling going on there. Just come in there and just bleep, throw one or two of them in there every now and then just to get them really fired up. So if they're already pumped up, that just gets them more pumped up when you plead to them, and it could drive them right in and just make them real excited to come into your spread. Now let's talk about tuning the call or taking care of your call. There's a couple rules I want you to go by. First of all, if it's working well, don't mess with it. Second of all, make sure you know how to use the call well before you take it apart, because you got to know how to tune it, how it's supposed to sound once you get it back together. So keep that in mind before you take anything apart. Now, if you want to clean it and take it apart and you're confident with all those things, all you do is simply turn off the mouthpiece, just twist it, and it'll expose your gut pieces. Now, what we want to do first is we want to scribe a line around where the gut pieces are, so we have a starting point to go by once the call is apart and we go to put it back together. So all I'm doing is taking a pen and I'm just scribing a line around the entire call so I have everything lined up, and then when I go put that back together, I'm going to know how far I want to press it in. Okay? So now once my line is scribed, I can feel confident that I can take this thing apart and I know how far it should go in. Now, if the call's a little too high, leave it out a little bit. If the call's too low and too raspy and not snapping over clean, press it in a little bit further. But that's our working point right there, is our scribe line. So what I'll do is I'll take a pair of pliers now, but make sure if you use pliers that you cushion up the teeth so you don't mark up your plastic. You can use duct tape and foam or whatever it is, or you could wrap a cloth around it and use that as well. So we're going to squeeze the pieces with the plier, and notice how I got it set right up against the edge of the call, and I'm just turning the call and holding the gut pieces in place. So I turn the call out, it comes off, and then I got my gut pieces. And now there's the three parts are the wedge, the reed, and the tone board. Take the wedge off, take the reed off, you got your tone board. Clean everything up. Now you'll notice when you put this back together, we have some tuning tabs at the back of the tone board here. That's where the reed slides up against, and that's where the wedge slides up against. So get your reed cleaned up and take a look at it when you're done and make sure that there's no delamination of the reed material, that there's no dirt on it, and it looks good, ready to go back in. And once you look at your reed, once you get your reed ready to go in, take a look at it. If it has any kind of curve at it at all, natural curve, make sure that that natural curve is always curving upward away from the tone board when you place it on there. So I'm going to slide it down on the tone board back to my tuning tabs, natural curve going up. Then I'm going to take my wedge, small part down, skinny part down, and that slides into the tuning tabs. And my scribe lines should be all lined up real well there. So once we got that, then we just insert it back into the call, kind of turn it a little bit, get it started, and you'll notice that our scribe line is all lined up and we're ready to press the guts back into it. I just take the mouthpiece, the part that you blow in, and I slide it over the caul without catching that reed and bending it. Put it in there real carefully and put pressure against the wedge, the short piece, and that's how we're going to press it back in. Now I'm just going to look at my scribe line there, and I'm going to push it together. Sometimes it takes a little bit of torque, and I got it right on that scribe line. Now that's where I like the caul set before, so I'm going to leave it there now. And I'm going to turn the mouthpiece around, put that on, and we're ready to test it out. Let's just see what this one sounds like. Just like I like it. Now just remember, you got a lot of tools in your bag. Try them all. Practice, get as good as you can be, and learn from the geese, because they change with time as well. What used to work years and years ago doesn't necessarily work as well nowadays. But go to our website and take a look at all of our products. Be more successful in the field.